her desire for him was ultimately buried because she had all of these demands, these to-do lists, these things with kids, with chores, with the home, with the this and the that, and that she wasn't able to relieve all of that. But when she was, underneath it was like this world of arousal and desire for her partner. He's doing everything he can to accelerate her, push on that gas, and he's being met with resistance, with a continued lack of desire. If you're in a car, she has her e-brake on and her foot is on the brake. So no matter how hard you're pressing that gas, you ain't going to go anywhere. No one wins in that dynamic. How can we lighten the brakes so that when we do press on the gas, when we do enter into exploring all of these things that are really exciting and arousing and turn someone on and build the romance, whatever have you, that is met?
How many drinks maximum before having a sex conversation? Kirsten, I'm so happy to have you back. I have invited Kirsten Trammell, sex and relationship coach, to talk about empowering men to become great lovers. In Wisdom Bomb number 1, we talk about how men too often and unintentionally turn women off. In Wisdom Bomb number 2, we talk about how to turn a woman on. And in Wisdom Bomb number 3, we're going to talk about mismatched desire. And so before we dive in, there is no evidence whatsoever that men have higher desire than women. It's about 50-50 in my experience. But let's start with the stereotype. How do you coach men and couples when the man has the higher sex drive?
I like to think of it, and there's something called the dual control model, where ultimately every person has a sense of acceleration towards arousal and a sense of brakes towards arousal. And a lot of the times, what can happen in a dynamic where the man has a higher sex drive than the woman is that he's doing everything he can to accelerate her, push on that gas, and he's being met with resistance, with a continued lack of desire. And that can become really frustrating and almost defeating because it's like, I'm doing all of the things. I'm giving her the flowers. I'm saying the nice compliments. I'm setting up the dates. I'm learning the sex skills. Like, I'm doing all of the things. Why isn't this working? What is wrong with me? And oftentimes what can really be happening is that this woman has her brakes on full send. Like, if you're in a car, she has her e-brake on and her foot is on the brake. So no matter how hard you're pressing that gas, you ain't going to go anywhere, right? So it's really comes down to, how can we take that e-brake off? How can we lighten the brakes so that when we do press on the gas, when we do enter into exploring all of these things that are really exciting and arousing and turn someone on and build the romance, whatever have you, that is met. So, I'm just thinking of a very specific client that I worked with where, you know, the couple was really in this dynamic where she wasn't interested in having more sex and he was. And come to find out that really what was unfolding here was that her desire for him was ultimately buried because she had all of these demands, these to-do lists, these things with kids, with chores, with the home, with the this and the that, and that she wasn't able to relieve all of that. But when she was, underneath it was like this world of arousal and desire for her partner. So how can we help to take off the brakes? I think as a question, while maybe it's not as fun and sexy and exciting, but it's really important and ultimately leads to the end result that everybody wants.
So it's not as exciting, but it's freeing to
Mm,
know, oh, this is not because she doesn't desire me. This is not because she doesn't like sex. This is just because when she's in her head and worried and she has one or more breaks on, we ain't going anywhere. And so, is there value to name those breaks?
mm. I think that might be a little dependent on the relationship dynamic. However, I do think that it could be supportive to even just say, I recognize that there is a lot going on in our lives right now and you have a lot of stress. And the last thing that I want to do is add another to do to your day in the line item of having a sexy time with me. So what
Mhm.
can we do so that you can feel lighter in your experience right now? And that maybe if it's supportive for you that we would have time to connect. Actually communicating something like that could be helpful because I've seen where if someone doesn't, what ends up happening is it's like a tit for tat. Well, I did the laundry, so they should want to have sex with me, or I did this and they still aren't wanting to have sex with me. And then resentment builds and these unspoken expectations create really an additional layer of challenge in the relationship dynamic.
So no transactional sex unless it's done for play, but that's different.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
and I think that I'll just add this to that is that I think that that's something that often happens unconsciously. It's not like a, oh, I'm thinking in my mind, if I empty the dishwasher, this will happen. It's something that happens unconsciously that we kind of start to build up over time without recognizing it.
I love it because too many men are indeed transactional and believe that if they somehow find a way to steal her to-do list and do all those items, they will be rewarded with sex. And this is not the case.
Hmm, hmm.
Not at all.
Yeah, and I don't think no one wins in that dynamic. The man doesn't win and the woman doesn't win at all, right? It doesn't feel good to be in a space of transaction.
So basically, honoring her breaks, honoring her with having breaks is the first step to releasing them so that then you can press on the throttle.
Hmm, hmm.
Wonderful. So now let's take the less stereotypical, but that, view that happens as often, which is if the man has a lesser sex drive.
I would start by saying that there is definitely this expectation, I think, for men to always want to have sex and to always be ready to go at any time. And why that often can be true, that creates even more stress and more shame and guilt when that isn't unfolding. And I think that men can go through times in their lives where they are stressed out or where they might be experiencing physical conditions that are impacting their sexual drive or taking medication that is impacting their sexual desire. And so just being able to acknowledge and honor that there's kind of another layer on top of this for men to navigate where it isn't an expectation or isn't necessarily as acceptable for the man to not want to have sex, and that can be really challenging.
So it is very interesting because it is similar to men learning to understand women and how they turn them off by not understanding their need for
Mhm,
slow and gentle and progressive arousal,
mhm.
and to have basically is the content is different, but it is their feminine partner learning that men don't always get hard instantly.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think that we jump to these conclusions so often and take things so personally, and especially if there is, you're like some kind of premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction symptoms going on that that could be perceived as, oh, this is all my fault from the woman's lens, and that there are so many variables that come into play when it comes to sexual performance for a man.
So in many ways, stories can be really fun in the bedroom, role playing. But on the other hand, the stories that we make, the negative stories that we make about the other because he's not present, because she is in her head or saying no, those are basically killing sex drive on both sides.
Hmm. I would agree, yes.
So learning to diffuse those stories.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's something that we can practice on our own, stepping into creating a new narrative, almost challenging our thoughts and asking the question of, is this 100% true? I think so often we have these thoughts and these stories in our minds, and they're not necessarily based in complete reality. Maybe it's a direction of reality, perhaps. And there's so many more other things that could be at play here. So, challenging yourself, if this is where you're finding yourself right now, is this thought 100% accurate? Like, if I was to take this thought to court, put it on trial, would I win? And see what comes up for yourself.
I like it, and I'm also liking the what you're bringing, that it starts with doing work on oneself before going to the bedroom.
Mm.
You know, somehow men are too much under the shameful expectations that they should know, they have to know. And, in addition, they don't, because learning from porn is terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible learning. Porn is for visual entertainment, not, about real sex. And so for men to say, hey, I value more sex, I'm going to do some work on me, I'm going to prepare, I'm going to practice by myself.
Mhm.
And then when going to the bedroom, then they could be a lot more playful and more present.
Mhm. I think that there is a lot of value in self exploration and understanding the self independently of a partnership. That way, then there isn't this complete reliance on the partnership to have your needs met. And I also see the value in how can we through this dynamic and through this partnership, this relationship, this sexual connection, how can we together grow and understand ourselves better? I think that, sometimes there's this thought where you have to understand yourself in order to be with someone, or you have to love yourself in order to love someone else. And I think that it can be a both. And I think you can do those things on your own. And at the same exact time, relationships are some of the best places and sexual experiences are some of the best places to learn about yourself.
So what I'm hearing is, if at least one in the couple values sex, to then invite their partner to have sex conversation about, what sex really is, with its joys and pains, and
Mhm.
then what they both want, and then create ways, practices, sex dates in
Mhm.
order to basically create a better sex life.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the talking about sex is something that most people don't find comfort in doing, and it makes sense, right? Like, we don't grow up, most of us don't grow up having these conversations. As you're saying, most of us are getting our sex education from the entertainment of pornography. And so there's a disconnect in this sense of comfort and ease at which this conversation can be had. And so the more that you become comfortable, even just momentarily having conversations about sex or touching on the topic of sex, the easier it will become, and the easier and the more exciting and the more potential will be available in your sex life.
I love it. So, one final question,
Mm.
because having sex conversation is so difficult,
Mm.
especially at the beginning, they become easier and easier and easier as we go, and more
Mhm.
playful. But at the beginning, how many drinks maximum before having a sex conversation?
Well, that's funny. I mean, well, I would just say this: if someone is in this space where they, even the thought of having a conversation about sex is overwhelming or creates anxiety or fear, is to, I really recommend practice having the conversation out loud with yourself first. A lot of the times we have these desires or these thoughts that live in our heads and we don't actually verbalize them. And so if you're in the car alone, or if you're in your room or your office alone, actually saying out loud what it is that you want to ask for, what it is that you desire, and just getting used to hearing yourself saying these words out loud so that when you enter into an actual conversation with your partner, it doesn't feel so overwhelming and so terrifying, because you can say the word penis, you can say the word vagina, you can say, you've practiced it. And so I think that there is so much value in doing that exercise.
I love it, and you have not responded to my
Ah.
question. So, because many people uh, take a drink or two as a way of taking the edge off.
Mhm.
And so, how many drinks max?
Maximum. Well, I will not give prescription on how much to drink or not to drink, but I do think that what you're touching on is this piece of how can I step into the conversation with more ease, whether that is having a shot, whether that's having a glass of wine with your partner as you're entering into this, or whether it's doing some breath work before, or turning on some music and dancing and just being with yourself and not thinking about the conversation you're about to have, whatever your flavor of that is, whether it's a shot of brandy or taking 10 deep breaths to allow yourself to have that.
I'm loving it because the idea is we want to have a better sex life and we want the sex life to be easier, juicier, playfulier. I'm not sure if that's a word. And how can we basically bring that quality to our sex conversations?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Well, Kirsten, that was wonderful conversation. Please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real joy to be here with you and your community.
This was part three of three wonderful conversations with Kirsten. Please hit the like button below, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified when I publish new juicy content. In case you have not seen them, here are the links to part one and part two. Here is a link to a video Kirsten made to help men become more successful in the bedroom. And here is a video I made on brakes and accelerators. Enjoy.